Alison Higgins, and I work in marketing at Sony.
Ellen Hornstein, and I'm currently an assistant production coordinator on a television show.
I would have told myself to speak up more. I was super shy and always thought that everything I was going to say wasn't the right thing, and I've now realized later that probably what I was going to say was more of the right thing than what other people were saying. But I was just too shy and too insecure, and so I would definitely say speak up. My father said something very interesting to me. He said, doesn't matter what your major in as long as you learn how to learn. And so I was a history major, which has nothing to do with anything I've worked on, but I've always, in all my job interviews, when someone asks me why I was a history major, I say, you know what, it taught me to read and analyze stuff, and it gave me the critical thinking skills that I need for any job I'm ever going to have, is to figure out the situation and figure out how you're going to organize it in a way to get the job done. So,
I think that's a good one, actually. I think a lot of the stuff that I would say to myself would be, everything's not as dire as it seems. Looking back on it now, none of that stuff mattered. All the crap in high school, oh my god, if I don't get into college, my life is going to go nowhere. If it's not the college that I want. I think speaking up is a really good one, because I think if you let other people dictate what you're going to do, and you know it's not right for you, you're just going to regret not speaking up. And all that stuff, high school stuff, college stuff, and all that stuff, is so inconsequential when you get out into the real world. So you know what I mean? It's just for me it was anyway. I learned this the hard way working for my last boss. As an adult, this is what I would tell myself. Ask for the time off.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, especially in what I'm doing. If there's a wedding or something that you want to go and do where you need a doctor's appointment, let them get mad, because they're not going to care 5 minutes later something else is going to come across their desk that's more important than what you're asking for, and you're robbing yourself of things that you're going to kick yourself in the ass for later for not asking for. So definitely speak up for yourself, because if it's your boss who wanted that, guaranteed they'd be taking the time or asking their boss for it all. So I mean, obviously within reason and not abusing it, but I missed out on a lot of things because I was afraid to speak up, and I could have done it, and he even said to me, you should have said something, I would let you go. I mean, obviously depending upon what's going on, there were a couple of times when I wouldn't have been able to because of where we were, what we were doing, but there are a lot of things that I missed out on because I just was afraid to say something to him when it was who cares?
Well, and that's the thing. It's you won't remember the meetings you missed or the things you missed 5 years later, but you'll remember that wedding, or you remember that trip to see. Yeah. No, if you go on it, you'll remember it. But if you don't go on it, you won't remember why you didn't go. You won't remember what you did that day.
And the other thing that I remind myself of constantly is when I feel I shouldn't overstep my bounds and ask for that, or I shouldn't overstep my bounds and do that, or whatever. Someone else is doing it, and your boss is going to do it. There's always going to be somebody who's going to overstep that bounds and do it, and why shouldn't you be the one who's reaping the benefits or getting what you need out of the situation or whatever? Because there will always be somebody who's going to come up behind you and take that position, or come up behind you and bring up that suggestion or whatever. And I guarantee you, your boss is going to do it for themselves. So you just need to look out for yourself. I mean, you don't want to rock the boat, and you don't want to get fired and all that stuff. So you need to think about specifically how important it is to you. But don't miss out on something because you're afraid that you might upset your boss by asking. It's just, there's a lot of things I wish I had done differently in the work environment, and now I know that I could have. I mean, obviously when you're in it, you don't. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? I'm not talking about I want to leave at 5:45. I would never. I would never ask to leave. I go to work sick and get sent home. I don't call in sick. It's just not who I am. So I would never ask for that. And you'll find that people who don't work as hard as you, and people who slack off, and people who abuse the situation will get farther than you. And it's frustrating and it's annoying, but you can't compromise who you are to further yourself. I don't think I could go in and I could be a raving bitch and I'm going to take all the things that everybody I'm seeing Eric slap off as well, but I would go home at the end of the day and be miserable because it's not who I am, and I don't want to compromise who I am just to get ahead. I could not do that, which is part of the reason why I am where I still am. Yeah. So, but to me, it's more important for me to be true to who I am than it is for me to be having a producer credit at the end of my name, which is what I want to do. But I'm not going to compromise the fundamentals of my life and who I am and how I was raised to get there, because then I'm just going to be miserable doing it, and it's not going to feel good. And I'd rather just, Yes, I have very good work ethic. instilled in me by both my parents because, you know, you do your job and you do your job right. And if you have a problem, then you speak to the person that you have a problem with or whatever. But I don't know how to fail. I was not raised to be to fail in your job. Even if that means I don't know how to do it, can you show it to me? That's not failing, that's asking for help. Do you know what I mean? When we leave work, we don't just leave work. If we need to make a phone call or somebody calls on weekends or whatever, because it's what we do and because our ethics for that whole environment is very, you know, you have to do it. Just do it. And that's what we do. We solve problems. We make things happen. And so it just doesn't matter if you're not technically on the clock anymore. So, and sometimes it's to our detriment because we don't take care of ourselves, we take care of our jobs. So, I think if you want it bad enough and you have the drive, you make it happen. You find a way to make it happen. You don't say no, you just do it because there's somebody out there who will do it if you don't. Figure it out. Who has a little more determination or a little more desperation or whatever you want to say, and will figure out a way to make it happen, and then they'll be where you want to be because you played by the rules. So.
Yeah, it is. It's a fine line of playing by the rules and not playing by the rules. But you still have to follow some of the rules, otherwise you won't get anywhere.
I have to just remind myself that like this is where you're supposed to be, whether you agree with it or not, whether it frustrates you or not, whether you know why or not. Because at the end of the day, someone's going to take that risk and get where you want to be. So why shouldn't it be you? Do you know what I mean? And it's like the only person that you have to answer to at the end of the day is yourself. So if you're not happy, it doesn't matter what you're doing for a living. You're not happy. So you know what I mean? I think a lot of times it's wasted for me. A lot of times it's wasted like, oh, I should have opened my mouth and take this a bit farther, or I should have done this. And it's like, well, I'm the only one to blame for not opening my mouth. And it's like, it doesn't matter if it's because I was raised not to go back to my elders, or I was raised to do my job correctly and not question it. It's on me if I don't open my mouth and say something when I'm happy. So you know what I mean? So I have to just deal with where I am and be like, this is where I'm supposed to be for whatever the reason is. And I can change that, or I can stay on the path I'm on. So you know what I mean? It's like, it's up to you. Yeah, it's up to you, and it's really so much easier said than done, especially in this industry, because you don't want to run the risk of, oh, you opened your mouth and you said something and now I can't work with you anymore, which people are weird about stuff. But I think it's a lot of, your job only defines you if that's what you want it to do.
I feel like truly the grass is always greener.
Yeah,
There's
that's
so
true.
many
That's so true.
times so I'm like, oh my god, I wish I could have done that, and then you find out later that the person's like, oh, you know.
Yeah, not so happy or not so
Yeah,
proud.
totally.
I agree with that, but everything's relative to your own situation, you know what I mean? And I think it's hard sometimes.